Almost 1,000 workers are set to take 8 days of strike action at Gatwick Airport during the height of the summer. It's going to cause chaos for thousands of travellers. And Simon Calder joins me from Gatwick, where, of course, he's been following the story. Hello, Simon. What a shame. Good afternoon.
Look, I honestly didn't have this one on my bingo card. Yes, there's been quite a lot of talks going on for the past 6 months or so. Just been talking to the union, and they say that the ground handling staff, who work very hard on behalf of the airlines, doing everything from check-in to baggage handling to dispatching the aircraft, well, they are very cheesed off. They say, according to Unite, they're on less than £12 per hour, only marginally above the minimum wage. They work unsocial hours, and while the airlines are making an absolute fortune, the ground handlers, who work for separate companies, are not getting the same support. And so you have this unusual situation of 4 different ground handling companies. That's ASC, Menzies Aviation, DHL. They're the ones who actually look after after EasyJet, who are the biggest airline here, and also a company called GGS, which looks after British Airways and Vueling. All of those companies in dispute with their workers about the pay that the workers are claiming. And on top of that, you're having to that they have just said, right, we've had enough. We're going to call people out exactly as you say, Vanessa. 2 weeks from today, there will be a strike right through the long weekend. And a week after that, another identical strike. And my goodness me, we've talked about how little resilience there is in the system here at the busiest single runway airport in the world. So I'm afraid it's not looking great.
Does it mean, Simon, that it'll be so extreme that it will actually shut down the airport, or does it mean it's just going to gum up the works of everything and take forever for people to finally get on their flights out and in? How's it really going to affect the proceedings? And we know it's all set to be one of the biggest travel weekends that we've seen since 2019.
Well, exactly, yes. I mean, you are absolutely spot on. Probably the 28th of July is going to be the busiest day since 2019. Now, it won't shut down the airport, that's absolutely for certain, because, for example, there's other airlines here, such as Emirates, such as Turkish Airlines, who have different ground handling companies. And so, therefore, those will continue to fly. Of course, there will be contingency measures, and the management of Gatwick Airport say that even though they're not directly involved, because it's between the airlines, their handling companies and the workers, they will be doing all they can to help those work. And that will be typically bringing in management, perhaps even bringing in workers from other airports, although that has some difficult issues with security clearance. So nobody knows. And the really frustrating thing is, here we are 2 weeks ahead. A whole lot of people listening and watching you will have holidays booked to and from what's effectively the main holiday airport for the UK, and they're thinking, what do we do? What can we do? And the answer, I'm afraid, is very little. At the moment, all the airlines are saying is, well, we're disappointed. We're going to have a look at what we can do. There is, from a couple of the airlines, particularly EasyJet, encouraging talk about negotiations taking place next week. But it's a difficult one to call. Whether it's simply groups of workers throwing their weight around, quite understandably, because they can, and they know that everything in aviation depends on small groups of professionals doing their job just right, in collaboration with everybody else, and each of those small groups has quite a lot of power to put a spanner in the works. So it might just be, we absolutely want to get a decent deal, and this is the best way to do it. Or it might be that, we are going to dig in and just see what happens. I'm optimistic about it, but I can absolutely understand anxiety among passengers.
Is there a material difference, Simon, between the amount that these workers earn at Gatwick and the amount that they earn, for example, at Heathrow or Manchester Airport or Glasgow Airport or any of the other, Luton Airport? And if there isn't, are we then possibly in line for strikes at all the other major airports as well?
Really good question. Well, we've actually seen a lot of action involving the Unite Union and their General Secretary, Sharon Graham, very much on the side, she says, of aviation workers. We've had security strikes at Heathrow, after all, and there's been disputes at Birmingham, at Glasgow, at Edinburgh airports. No, all ground handlers will tell you that they don't get properly rewarded for the very stressful, difficult job they do, very safety critical, involves working unsocial hours, and they don't get enough cash. So I don't think it is that they are particularly badly paid here, although it's obviously it's a high-cost area to live in, south of London, and it's very, very tricky for them. But they are mostly, and I talked at length to the union rep here, and they're mostly saying, look, the airlines are making an absolute mint, and frankly, we'd like a bit of that because we had to put up with an awful lot of rubbish over COVID, and we think we deserve to be looked after.
Do you think there's any chance at all of coming to some kind of understanding or compromise between those who pay them and those people who don't think they're being paid enough? Or do you think that the airlines felt pushed to the brink during COVID themselves and therefore don't want to remunerate them any more lavishly?
Right. I think there is every chance of a settlement. The actual amount of cash that it would take to solve this dispute is far, far less than the economic damage it would do to airlines, to the airport here, and of course high levels of emotional damage to people who've been looking forward perhaps to their first holiday for the last 3 years since the pandemic. So I'm pretty optimistic that a way forward will be found, but it's just awful that everybody is thrown into uncertainty. And you can try talking to your airline, to your holiday company, and saying, I'm not so sure about this, can I change my booking? And they're going to say at this stage, no, you've got to assume it's going ahead. If the strike looks as though it will be taking place, then all kinds of measures will be put in place. But at the moment, I'm afraid, Vanessa, I have no idea what they are. And all you can do is sit on your hands and also cross your fingers, which at the same time is quite a difficult thing to do.
It is difficult. Simon, I don't know whether I'm dreaming this or it's just a romantic memory and I'm looking at the world through rose-tinted glasses, but I think I remember a time when you and I would discuss travel and the travel situation, and we would do it in an optimistic, buoyant, sort of jolly way, and we would talk about fantastic bargain flights to wonderful destinations, some of which I know I'd never heard of. You were always an expert, but I wasn't. You would tell me about places that I'd never even dreamed of visiting and how easy it would be for me to get there and how cheap it would be and what we'd find when we got there and how we really should explore. And I remember that, I think I remember this, maybe I'm misremembering, but I remember when I thought that travel items with you were fun and jolly and about lovely and wonderful opportunities to explore the planet and see things you haven't seen before and not get totally ripped off and come back feeling as if you'd learned and seen and felt something you hadn't seen before. What has happened? Because every time I speak to you, I love speaking to you, but every time I do it, the other day we were talking about it's going to be so unbelievably hot, it's going to be a fiery furnace in Europe. Should we not immediately try to do our best to wriggle out of the holidays that we've booked? Before that, we were talking about air traffic control strikes all over Europe and how the amount of air flight space is compromised by the war in Ukraine and everything else. It seems like it's turned into a disaster zone, our conversations, instead of a pleasure. And I'm mourning the loss.
Oh, look, it will be all right, Vanessa, I promise. Things will get back to normal. And the vast majority of people, honestly, are going to have great holidays this year. But absolutely, there's an awful lot of stress around at the moment. It's the last thing that people need. But then everyone will come back with great memories of fantastic beach holidays, city breaks, adventures. We have got to make up for all that time, all those experiences we lost during COVID. But I absolutely agree. At the moment, it's not looking particularly easy.
Simon Calder, thank you very much. Always a great pleasure to have you on the programme.